What is going on YouTube? Today we are beginning our end game tier list. We are going to be doing 4 of these across the board. Today we are starting with relief / closing pitchers. I ran a poll over on my Twitter, if you don't follow me over there, at JulianTheCut, and this came out to be relief and closers, who you guys wanted to see first. We're gonna go starters next, then outfield, then infield to round out our list. I wanted to do 4 videos so I can get a little bit more detail on specific cards. I'm also not going to be going over every single card in the game, just the cards that I think are worth going over. If there's not a card on this list that you like, that does not mean you should stop using that card. It just means that I don't think it's completely up to snuff with the best of the best in the game. But if you're good with a card, stay with it. If you're not good with a card that is on this list, get rid of it. It's the way it goes. It's the way of life. My word is not gospel at all. But if you guys like the content, make sure you leave a like and subscribe down below, and we're going to get right into the list. We're going to start off with our honorable mentions. These are honorable mentions, not because they're still great, but because these cards were really good at one point. Their stats are kind of weeding themselves out, especially here in the end game, but I did want to shout them out for how good they were at some point in the game. And if you're still using them, I do not shame you at all, because they were really good at some point. Number 1 is going to be 87 overall tops now, Johan Duran. This card was really good. I mean, the per 9s were insane, especially this came out like the first month of the year. And I think this card is better than his finest card, just because the cutter instead of the slider on his finest card, I think that actually makes him a little bit worse. That card's obviously better in terms of all the per 9s and all that, but this card has the ideal mix. I wish his finest got this version of it. If it did, that card would be even better, but you'll see him a little bit later. Number 2 is going to be the 90 overall face of the franchise, Aroldis Chapman. This card is still really good despite the control. I mean, if you want to use him, he's a really cheap lefty. You probably got him the opening week. You probably still have him. If you don't have the newer Aroldis, I don't blame you for still using this one, because there's a very small amount of good lefties and usable lefties in this game. Next up is the 90 face of the franchise, Devin Williams. I really loved this card early on. I know a lot of people kind of had their feelings about him. I thought he was amazing. He's not better than the new Devin Williams we got, but again, if you just looking at really good cards that came out early on, this is one of them. If you're still using them because you like them, I understand it. I get it. The per 9s are still insane. The last one on the honorable mentions is going to be this 94 overall Chad Green. This one is actually super usable still. Sinker, cutter, slider, changeup, fastball. It's like the perfect pitch mix. He never threw half these pitches, so I thought that was really funny with this Chad Green. But he was really good, and if you still use him, I do not blame you. He's just one of the better relievers that we've seen, and he's a little bit of a long relief with a 36 stamina, so he's definitely a fun card to use that we don't get to use every year. So that'll round out our honorable mentions. Now, with that out of the way, we are sliding right into our lefties. Like I said with Aroldis Chapman before, the lefties are few and far between in this game. There's not that many good ones. Clearly, since the 95 All-Star Game Joe Mantelplay is in this, he has a sinker, changeup, curveball, fastball. It's not the best mix, but it's a weird one, and he has really good control. He puts the ball wherever you want. If you're on Hall of Fame or Legend, this card is actually kind of usable just because of that ball per 9. You can place the ball wherever you want, and the speed differentials are good enough, despite him not blowing it by you. It's definitely a change of pace pitcher. You're not going to want to go more than 1 inning or against like a bunch of righties, but he's definitely a usable lefty that I felt like needed to be on this list. Next up, the second most usable, I guess is the right word, is going to be Gregory Soto, also from the All-Star Game. This card, just like the one last year, probably should have been better than he was. The control was an issue on like his circle change, just like an unusable pitch. Kind of the same with the slider. His motion is weird, but very readable, but he throws hard and he has good per 9. So just the fact that he's a lefty and throws hard gets him into this conversation with good per 9s. I don't think he's the best option. He's really similar to the Aroldis we're going to see later and some of the other guys, but he is definitely an option. And if you want to fill out with 4 lefties in the pen, he pretty much has to be there, or like one of your options. So Gregory Soto. Next up, we got this Drew Pomeranz. I don't know how to feel about this card. He has perfect hits in K per 9. His cutter, though, has 23 control, and he has 66 ball per 9 as a whole. He's definitely a weird one. He's a little bit funky in his delivery. He's not really that good, but again, there's not that many great lefties, and this is a different lefty in that it's not just 99 slider changeup. It's at least a little bit different, and he gets at least some credit on that end for me. Next up is going to be this 98 overall finest Brad Hand that came out in 2020. He is back. He has 122, 114 per 9s with 99 BB9. So that's all very good. This card has a very, very disgusting slider, and he has a slider, four seam, sinker, and curveball. So the pitch mix is actually not bad. The one issue with this card is his velocity is not great. He only gets up to 93, 94. He kind of has a weird arm slot. He can make some stuff work. Again, he's kind of an off-the-cuff lefty that if you don't want a guy throwing 100 with outlier like most of the top options at left-handed reliever, he's pretty much your best bet for that niche. Next up, we have arguably the best lefty in the game, depending on who you ask and how you do with him, is going to be Jose Alvarado. He had a player of the month card this year with the Phillies. He has outlier on his sinker. He has a cutter, a 12-6 curveball, and a four-seam fastball. The 12-6 curveball is probably the best curveball in the game. Not that it's still very good either, but it's the most usable of the group of curveballs. Then he has essentially max per 9s. Once you get to P3, he's going to be maxed on hit and K per 9. 82 BB9 is not terrible, but not great. Pretty much the standard for the top tier lefty relievers in this game. And having a sinker and a cutter is really nice. One goes out, one goes in. You can pitch to both lefties and righties with this guy. Just some people hit him really well because he is probably one of the more common pitchers used, especially early out of the bullpen. When you're playing ranked seasons, this is most likely the first lefty people go to, but he is very good. I have him a little bit lower just because of how common he's seen, but he is super unique in terms of the high-end lefty relievers, and again, there's not a whole lot of them. Next up, we have number 3, in my opinion, in the lefty relievers is going to be Josh Hader. Josh Hader and the next two cards are all pretty much the same, so you can have them in any order you like in terms of the way that you like them. This is just the way that I feel about them and my level of trust with each of these three cards. If they're different for you, that is completely okay. They're all really, really similar. The one thing that distinguishes Josh Hader is he has a outlier 2-seam instead of an outlier 4-seam, so he actually throws a little bit softer. His 2-seam is pretty good. It moves, but it's not like one of those Edwin Diaz 2-seams that's essentially a sinker. It's a good 2-seam, but it's still not one of the greatest pitches in the world. 2-seam sliders, circle change, and then the 4-seam. The fact that he has a circle change saves this card. He is in the postseason program, which actually puts him down a little bit for me as well, just because the grind is a lot. But if you already have that done, good. If you're going out of your way to get this card in that program, it is kind of a tedious grind, but he is free, which is, again, nice. I think this Josh Hader is very good, and he should probably be in every bullpen unless you're running 3 and you want to switch him for like a Jose Alvarado, for example. But this is one of those guys that is a staple in pretty much every bullpen. Next up is going to be the 99 overall Takashi Billy Wagner. This is an interesting card because he's the most expensive on this list. He was in one of the featured programs that we have yet to see back. We're probably going to see these feature programs come back, so by the time you're watching this, he might be a lot cheaper. He might be more expensive. I'm not fully sure how that SDS is going to go about this, but he is the one that you can buy in this. So if you have an excess of stubs, he's probably the guy you're going to want to get. Plus, you're going to need him to go get that Shohei Ohtani, and a new Mickey Mantle just came out. So those are things to think of when you're looking at this Billy Wagner. He has maxed out per 9s, 81 ball per 9. Again, probably about the standard. Outlier on the 4-seam fastball, which is really good. And I think he probably has the best of the pitch mixes of the big 3 in terms of lefty pitchers. 4-seam slider, curveball, and changeup. Having the curveball and the changeup based off the slider is pretty nice, although his changeup is not great. It is kind of like that Gregory Soto. A little bit better than that one, but it is in that same ballpark. Billy Wagner, to me, they like slightly tweaked his arm angle from a couple of years ago, so he has not been as dominant as he was back in MLB 20, but he is still very good, especially without a lot of options. This is one of the better ones. Billy Wagner, go Cop. And the number 1 lefty reliever in the game should not be much of a surprise. Is going to be Aroldis Chapman. A lot of people are going to disagree with this because they see Chapman all the time. If you've seen Chapman in every game and you've played 150 ranked games, he's probably terrible, and I get that. But to the normal guy, based off how lefties are in this game, Aroldis is going to be the best. His fastball gets up on you the fastest, And then if you play him and pitch to him the right way, playing his fastball and slider off of each other is very good. Having a sinker is cool, and it is a slower sinker, which is definitely a nice thing to add. You can catch people really off guard throwing a slower sinker. If they were trying to sit dead red fastball and they were super early on, they can roll one over on the sinker. It has a little bit of value to Aroldis. He's also a free card, although he's going to be in the Extreme program, so it is a little bit of a grind to get Aroldis, but he is free, and Extreme's been out for a while, so there's a decent chance that if you have grinded that at all, you probably have him already. And if you do have Aroldis Chapman, he must be in your bullpen, because I think he's the best left-handed reliever in the game. Moving on over to right-handed relievers, these are going to be some of the guys to start with that I think are usable, and if you aren't successful with some of the guys higher on this list, go ahead and use these ones. I think they're really good options. They just have some flaws to them compared to some of the other cards. So let's get into it. Number one is going to be Johan Duran. Again, I mentioned his Tops Now card. I think this one is obviously better in terms of per nines. I really wish the cutter was here instead of the slider. The cutter is a better pitch when you're playing it off a four-seam fastball like you are with Duran, and that's going to be your big one too. Especially the outlier splitter, having a fast slider doesn't actually work. It's kind of weird. You actually want the slower cutter on this card, so it is a little bit of a weird one. I think he's still going to be good. Outlier fastball is obviously hard to beat if your opponent can't touch it, but if they can, this one is easier than his previous card. That's why he is on the bottom of this, but he is still very, very good. And if you ever see me playing and not hitting him, it's because he is still very, very good. Next up, we got Daniel Bard. I mentioned this in the other finest video, but if you have played BR and you have likely seen this card, he is very good. He has kind of a weird arm slot. Outlier on the sinker. He throws very, very hard. He has a really hard slider too, and he has a hard circle change. Everything kind of comes at you. If you're playing this guy on Hall of Fame or Legend and you're not used to speed, this guy is going to eat you up. If you are used to speed, then he won't be quite as bad, and that's why he's at the bottom half of this list. I do think he's usable, and I don't think everybody's using him, so having him in there is kind of a benefit, just because not everybody is seeing his arm slot all the time like they are with the Marianos and some of the other guys further down on this list. Next up, we have Camilo Duvall. This is always an interesting one. He has like the craziest arm slot in the game. He comes pretty much from the side. He has outlier on his cutter, which is kind of wild. And then he has a slider and a sinker. He is almost like Rob Dibble, but not at all. I know that makes no sense, but instead of outlier on a four-seam, he has a sinker and then a fast cutter. He's a better version of Emmanuel Clase, certainly, especially with the arm slot. He can really catch some people off balance, and if you're against a guy who hasn't seen a lot of Duvall, you're gonna have a really, really good time. Some people can see him pretty well though, so be wary of that, and you can recognize that pretty early if they do pick him up well. Get somebody else up in the pen. But this is definitely a really good option, and he's also in that Player of the Month one that Jose Alvarado was in. So that was a pretty good Player of the Month program. Next up, we have a trio of pitchers that are the exact same. So I will not talk about them each too much, but I have them in order of how good they are. All three are pretty much the exact same. And what I mean by that, they are an outlier sinker, slider, four-seam, cutter pitcher. All four are very usable. It is a great pitch mix. I just think there are some benefits to the guy later on. But starting off, Blake Treinen, 95 overall, so obviously the overall isn't quite there. 89 BB9 is not great. The 93 K per 9 is not very good at all, especially at this point. But 122 hit per 9 is good. Treinen, again, outlier on the sinker, is going to throw hard. I don't love that all four of his fastballs are essentially near the same speed, but that's just kind of the game you play. Treinen, though, is always really good, and he'll always play. He is the worst of this trio. Then you have Brusdar Graterol, all right? You see a little bit of improvement. The BB9 is definitely better. The K per 9 is over 100. The hit per 9 is about the same. Then you have, again, outlier sinker, slider, four-seam cutter. Same issue again. The speeds are really similar, but he has better per 9s and way more stamina. So just off that alone, I think this Brusdar is significantly better than Blake Treinen. The third of our trio is going to be this brand new Evan Phillips that came in the Extra Finest program. This is a free card, which is super nice. He's the first card you get in that program. Again, super nice. 125, 111, and 100 BB9. The best lineup of per 9s we've seen of this trio. And he has his slider as his first pitch, and that is such a bonus for him that you don't even understand. It is so good because that's going to be his best control pitch. It's just, it sets everything else up. up. Also, his cutter is only 94 as opposed to 98 from the other two guys. So there is going to be a little bit of a speed difference between the cutter and the four seam and the sinker. The sinker also has outlier. This is the best of that trio. And if you're going to pick one between the three, pick this one. They're all Dodgers, so they all go on the theme team. Speaking of a Dodger, another guy from that finest program we got is going to be this Eric Gagne. Gagne is never that good, but this one has outlier. I don't think it changes a whole lot. I think it helps his differential a smidge, and it keeps people a little bit more off balance, but I don't think it makes him any much better than he ever really was before. Having the Vulcan splitter curveball is just not great, especially when all those off speeds are essentially the same speed outside of the curveball. Vulcan change is a unique pitch though, and it's probably the best changeup outside of a forkball. That's cool. Gagne's here. I probably wouldn't use him. Next up, we have Takashi Dennis Eckersley, the ultimate switch it up style of reliever from the right side. He doesn't throw overly hard, but his fastball will get up to 97, so it's not lacking speed. It's just not outlier. Slider, sinker, four seam, curveball. He has perfect pronouns. He's gonna dot you up completely, and he has a funky arm angle. Again, kind of like Duvall. If they can't pick up the arm angle, this guy is gonna be really, really good. And if you can put the ball right where you want it and hit those perfect pinpoints, this guy is going to be a dog. I haven't used him though, so I couldn't fully tell you, and I haven't really faced him too much either, which I think is, again, a benefit. Not too many people have faced him because he's not the big name hard thrower that we're all used to. So give him a shot. See what you think about Dennis. Next up, completely different from Eckersley, we have Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz is going to throw hard. He has two pitches, and he is going to throw both of them very hard. Outlier on the fastball. He has a 92 mile an hour slider. It probably gets up to 93, 94. And then they gave him a sinker instead of a two-seamer, which is going to be really nice for him. And that sinker does not have outlier. So there's a speed difference between all three. This guy is the sneakiest arm angle in the game. I mean, he only ever has four seam, slider, two seam typically, and the cards play better than they should with that mix. So I think this card will actually be pretty solid, again, with the outlier and the max per nines. He's gonna be okay. He's a free card in the collection for the finest, so if you're working towards Mantle, you'll probably wind up getting Edwin, and give him a shot if you like speed and funk. Trumpets too, a lot of trumpets. Next up is one of the sneakier cards in this program, and that's going to be Sir Anthony Dominguez. Sir Anthony Dominguez, 120, 117, 87 BB9. Not the best on the BB9, but about where all the lefties are, so it kind of works out that way. Four seam, sinker, slider, circle change, cutter. I mean, that's about as good of a pitch mix as you're going to ask for. And the differentials. He's going to hit 100 on that four seam. I'm not sure, actually, if this card has outlier or not. So if he does, you guys let me know down below. I didn't check it before this. I don't think he does. But if he does, he'll hit 102. If not, he'll just hit 100 every now and then. The sinker is slower, perfect. The cutter is slower than that, perfect. This is a really, really good card that I did not expect to get a cutter. I'm telling you, he's kind of sneaky good. If you ever faced him in BR, kind of nice. That BR card only ever had a four seam and a sinker. This one got a cutter. Watch out. Number 8 on this list is going to be Rich, aka Goose Gossett. He is in the BR program as well. Goose Gossett to me is really hit or miss, and with 79 BB9 and really no control on many of his pitches outside of his fastball, I don't love it. There's outlier. He's going to throw hard. Some people really struggle against Goose. I am one of them, but I have never liked using him. I don't think this card's going to be much different in that. He just doesn't throw the ball where I want it to, and it really frustrates me. So Goose is going to be number 8 on this list. His pitch mix is really, really good, and his deception in his delivery is crazy. But again, not being able to control stuff, even worse than the numbers show, is very, very annoying. Number 7 on this list is actually a little bit of a surprise to me. When this card came out, I overlooked it completely, but 99 Tom Hankey is better than Goose Gossett. He has outlier in his fastball as well, but his forkball is one of the singular best pitches in the game. The forkball and his fastball tunnel so well together that it's like honestly very difficult to describe. It's very deceptive. Tom Hankey is like a guy that we've never really seen in the meta in years past either, so it's pretty much a new arm slot, and he is kind of weird. He stares at you, has a hunch when he starts. Fastball, forkball, slider is not the best mix in the world, but I promise you, you'll be pleasantly surprised using this card. It's way better than you'd ever expect. Number 6 on this list is going to be this 99 overall finest Felix Baltista. 4-seam with outlier. What a surprise. Who would have thought? It's almost like a necessity at this point. Everybody has outlier. It's okay. He has a splitter, slider, and a cutter. Really, really good per nines. I don't love his speed differentials, and that's the one reason that he's not in the top 5 here. But he is a big pitcher, 6'5", which is definitely going to help. And he has a good mix. Sinker, or not sinker, slider, cutter are great. I wish there was a bigger difference between those two pitches in terms of speed. That is really my big flaw with this Baltista card. He's also doesn't have one of the best releases in the game. That absolutely holds him back. Baltista, number 6. And we are now in our top 5 relievers in the game. It is crazy that one of the top 5 right-handed relievers is going to be a guy that is not a 99, but it is true. 96 overall, Raleigh Fingers, who may or may not be due for an upgrade. If they give this guy if they give him a better card, a 99 with max per 9s, that might be the best reliever in the game. We'll kind of see when that happens. But despite the 99 BB9, he puts it pretty much wherever you want. Raleigh's deception between his sinker and his forkball is immaculate. The forkball from him is so good and it's so slow. His slider plays off everything so well, and then his fastball even gets up to 97, 98 at times. I don't have enough good things to say about this card besides the fact that he just keeps people off balance if you know how to pitch with him. If you're just spamming sinkers inside, he might get rocked, but if you use him in any sort of a decent manner, he is one of the most devastating relievers that there are in this game, and I have loved using him since he came out a couple months ago now, so it's been a good time. Number 4 on this list is going to be the 98 overall Rob Dibble. Rob Dibble is part of the Mickey Mantle collection. He is, I think you need 7 collection vouchers, then you'll unlock Dibble first, and then the rest of them will get you Mickey Mantle. Dibble has 119, 125 per 9s, way better than we've ever seen with Dibble cards in the past. The 79 BB9 is not great. Dibble has a really long and annoying windup, and his fastball gets up on you. If you ever have trouble hitting against Randy Johnson or Nolan Ryan because of their fastball just getting on your hands, Dibble has the same type of fastball. It is really, really quick. I know they're all outlier that we've been saying, but some are faster than others. This is one of the ones that are, in fact, faster. And he has the best difference between his slider and his cutter. I mean, there is a 9-mile-an-hour difference. They move the exact same way. And out of his hand, his four seam looks exactly like his cutter. So all of his pitches tunnel really, really well, and they all have incredibly different timings. So if you can keep people off balance timing wise, they don't stand a chance against Rob. Lefty, righty, it does not matter. He is number 4 on this list. Number 3 is going to be 99 overall Joe Nathan. This card actually has an opportunity to be one of the best pitchers in the game. The no changeup kind of sucks. I think the 12-6 is just nowhere near as good as a changeup, but it does work well for Joe. Maxed out per 9s, 98 BB9, fastball, sinker, cutter. They all move very well. His slider has great control. Again, the 12-6, not the best, but it is okay. Joe Nathan, again, like Tom Hankey, has not been great in years past, so people haven't seen too much of him. And this is a free card with max per 9s and the best pitch mix in the game outside the no changeup. He's really, really good, and you should absolutely give him a shot. The number 2 best right-handed reliever in the game, in my opinion, is going to be this 99 2020 finest Devin Williams. Changeup, primary, amazing. His fastball can get up to 99 miles an hour. His cutter is only 87 miles an hour, so that speed differential already incredible. He does have a sinker that is slower than the fastball. Perfect. It'll run in on righties, run away from lefties. Really good that you can mix in with those two. And then he has a screwball. Screwballs are a super interesting pitch in this game that for some reason they get up on you if you're not ready for it. And Devin just has one of the more interesting mixes in the game, especially having his changeup be his primary, which is fantastic. The best optimal control for it, and then just throwing in a screwball in there to play off the changeup and the sinker. This guy is amazing. Maxed out per 9s. His only issue is his BB9, and it definitely does become an issue, especially with the screwball. But if you can keep the timing off with people, he's a stud. And to absolutely nobody's surprise, the number 1 right-handed reliever in the game is going to be 99 overall finest Mariano Rivera. Cutter, 4-seam, sinker, slider, changeup, max hits per 9, 103 K per 9, 121 BB9. He's going to have a 99 control cutter that is coming in at 96, 97, 98, and you can put it wherever you want with one of the better deliveries in the game. Mo is just that guy. Mo is just that guy. His sinker is actually slower than his cutter too, which is pretty interesting. I think it plays. Mariano's amazing. If you used him the last 2 years, you know how good Mariano just is in general. He was a World Series card this year, so he is more on the expensive side. That is okay, because we do not care. Mo is the best. Enter Sandman. He is the best reliever in MLB The Show 22, and I don't think it's fully closed. And that wraps up our list today, guys. That is all the right-handed and left-handed relief and closing pitchers that I think are worth mentioning and that you should have in your bullpen. If you guys have a guy that you're really good with, leave him down in the comments below. Let me know if I missed anybody. I certainly might have. There are so many great cards in this game. The relief pitching is obviously on the shallower side, especially in the left-handed department, but I do think all the cards I listed here are super usable, and I gave a bunch of options for you guys to use from free to expensive. So if you have some free stubs or if you have some free time to grind them out, go ahead and get them and tell me how you're doing with them. Thank you guys for watching, and if you liked the video, again, make sure you like and subscribe for more great content. We have 3 more of these lists coming in the future. Again, starting pitchers, outfielders, and infielders will all be coming soon, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Have a good one. Peace.